Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Monday with the Mayor. I'm Bradford Raths, and we're back in Jasper with Terry Seitz.
Thank you, Bradford. Good day.
Good day to you, too. So another big abatement, or tax phase-in, excuse me.
Well, abatement, it's a big word. And abatement comes in, sometimes people go, well, gee, you're not charging taxes to these people. These people generally would be corporations. Well, the tax phase-in portion of the Indiana Code, which is what we adopted, and then we have our own local Jasper scoring mechanism, allows for property taxes to be phased in over a period of presently up to 10 years. At some point, there's a super abatement that could come into play, which wasn't a factor recently, and we haven't addressed that as a city. But a phase-in simply says if you met certain specifications, we can score and look at those specifications from the wages you pay, from the benefits you offer, from your use of green technology, of course, certainly from jobs offered. Are you repurposing existing building? That's in our ordinance. That's very critical. And in the terms of what happened last week with Jasper Engines, this tax phase-in was graded to be essentially a 10-year maximum phase-in. 8 years, 100%, 75, and then 50% the last 2 years respectively, but not for that abatement. I promise you this, I'm not sure those jobs, that expansion, that repurposing the old Kimball Plastics building, I'm not sure any of that would have happened. I know that we competed against Missouri. I know we competed against Michigan. And the reason I'm talking about those are the two places that Jasper Engines has already expanded to. And that's wonderful. We know everything's going to be here. But long gone are the days where we could assume that just because a company has grown here and just because we have lunch with somebody and have a bowl of soup and they're at the next table, that they're going to expand their company in Jasper. We needed to get and to modernize our toolbox on economic development. And that toolbox was virtually empty. We're now looking to add tools into that, and that would be very critical for us. So this announcement last week by Jasper Engines of the jobs of moving their transmission line to the former plastics building that's set idle for 8 years, and then literally competing with other states and cities, it's a win-win-win. And I couldn't have had a better week.
So from that standpoint, you mentioned one of the key words, jobs. Now we got to find the people to fill.
That's been something that we have talked about and I've been a proponent of for a long time. As I think back in February or whatever, when I was interviewed in the state interview that made some business news, I've talked about 700 jobs, but we added up at Du Bois Strong that were available. That was the low end. It was probably closer to 1,000. Some of the master brand jobs in Ferdinand that were announced recently were not part of that figure. None of these jobs were part of that figure. Jasper Engines is part of the group that was hiring them, but now it's specific. Jasper Engines told us last week they have over 100,000 hours of overtime paid so far in 2014. They're concerned, while they don't mind paying that, they're also wearing out some employees. We really have to work. And I see it as a public-private partnership involving the communities, the cities, Du Bois Strong, as well as private businesses that would actually be putting monies to something like Grow Du Bois County, that we specifically target areas that bring in those abilities to be productive as we all are. Just because an area has high unemployment doesn't mean that they are ideally suited to move things and make things, which is what the two things we do well. I think we have to do some research of that. Ultimately, though, I do believe that this is our greatest challenge. And along with that, probably 1A and 1B is housing. I think housing is one of those things, what does exactly that mean? Whether you call it affordable housing or not, I think each community has its own terminology of affordable housing. But when people come to work, where do they live? And we know that in the long run, they become taxpayers. Hopefully, in the long run, they become property owners. And the other part, we hope that they contribute to and send students to our schools. And while the growth of such would be maybe a little bit of a concern, especially from the school side of how do you adjust things, it's still wonderful because they would increase their student population. Ultimately, it's not about pure numbers of population. It's about recruiting and bringing in a qualified workforce, and taking it down to the level that if you've been recruiting a specific key individual, that you work with that spouse to say, here's other things that are available for the spouse to look at in a professional role, or what could they do? Maybe they work out of the home. How are we good in our entrepreneur business climate? It all works together, and there's no quick answer. But right now, with these announcements we've had, the writing's on the wall. We have to, as local government units, cities and counties, begin to put some economic development dollars to recruiting a workforce and grow it in Du Bois County and all the benefits that that will bring.
And as a bit of a wrap-up to that, this is the second major announcement. Obviously, Sten's had one too. So moving forward, just...
Well, I think that what would make the comparisons was we've had 9 tax phase-in requests. A couple of those were withdrawn or changed for various reasons, but they've involved mostly local companies. The reason that the Jasper engines and Sten's have a mirror is that Sten's occupied a building that was built and never occupied, was there about 10 years, and added jobs, and it was a locally grown company. Jasper Engines, a locally grown company, is adding jobs, and they're moving and repurposing a building that is in their neighborhood that has been idle for 8 years. And I do at the same time want to not only thank Jasper Engines for the effort last week and how we worked together on for the last several weeks, but also to Kimball International for basically being an engaged seller and a willing seller, and I think welcoming another quality neighbor, someone that I think they both have given so much to our community and provide great employment. And so I wanted to give a shout out to Jim Tin and the Kimball family as well.
Absolutely. Well, Mayor, we appreciate your time as always.
Thank you very much.
This has been this week's edition of Monday with the Mayor. We'll have more news after this.